My problem was to answer questions, and I did that to the best of my ability at all times.
In the United States, during the 1960s through 70s, international and national conflict challenged the country but motivated Americans to produce innovations and technological advancements that shaped the course of history. Following the launch of the Soviet Union's Sputnik space satellite in 1957 that orbited the Earth, the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union began to manifest itself into a race to send the first astronaut to the moon. Aeronautics evolved to the National Aeronautics and Space Administration to include space research in its missions. To many Americans, getting to the moon was more than just a giant step in the frontier of space exploration. It was a source of national pride and a display of power of democracy over the Soviet Union's communism.
Because of the influx in tasks and responsibility for the association, in the 1950s NASA began to hire large amounts of employees in order to ensure perfect calculations and to eliminate any chance of failure and international embarrassment. This included the hiring of many white professors, engineers, and mathematicians, men and women, to work in the top offices at NASA, as well as African American women as computers. These women were vital to the development of space flight technology and safety, as they computed trajectories of flights on many space missions, working on the calculations white engineers deemed busy work. NASA chief historian Dr. Bill Barry attests when they were done with the experiment after a few months, they realized the women were much more accurate, much faster, and did a better job, and didn't complain, and you could pay them less. With the racism in 1960s America, there was clear tension in the workplace between white and black employees. Despite the patriotism and national pride that came from the Cold War, the country could not have been more divided at the time. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X fought for the end of segregation, Jim Crow laws, and black codes enacted as early as 1865 by Southerners angry with the outcome of the Civil War. These laws prevented black and white people from sharing many public spaces like schools, pharmacies, and buses. However, one woman, Katherine Goebel Johnson, was able to change many people's opinions on black women's capabilities and left a long-lasting legacy with her achievements. Katherine Johnson shattered barriers of segregation and prejudice in the United States and pioneered a frontier of acceptance for black female voices in the fields of science and technology, changing the perspectives of those around her and inspiring many more. Throughout Katherine Johnson's life, she exemplified grit and determination, developing a strong love of learning that led her to the forefront of many historical moments in scientific history. Johnson was born in 1918 in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, where her curiosity and brilliance with numbers put her ahead several grades in school. At 13, she was already attending high school at historically black West Virginia State College. Between her mother's aptitude for math and her love of learning, Johnson was supported to excel in a field that was not previously available to black women. She often had to work twice as hard to become respected in school, especially at her young age, but her intelligence and wit forced her professors to recognize her talent and potential. She opened her teachers' and classmates' minds about black women's capabilities and graduated West Virginia State College with a Bachelor's of Science degree in French and mathematics.
The first time she was rewarded for her pristine intelligence and hard work was in 1940 when she was chosen to be one of the 3 black students to integrate into West Virginia graduate schools. Johnson's interest in learning and math allowed her to open doors for herself that were previously not available for black women at such a young age. Although her activism and criticism of racism weren't through speeches and outright condemnation of institutionalized prejudice, she put her head down and worked, breaking barriers in math and becoming known as a nationally renowned computer for NASA, even getting a book and a subsequent movie made about her work. Johnson's willingness to continue working despite challenges and lack of respect in her school and the workplace gave her many opportunities to lead by example and challenge the perspective of those around her.
Johnson's hard work and determination in a time when most of the country was against her made her time at NASA even more distinguished. Johnson began her career at NASA in 1953, starting out her work at the Langley Research Center, which was heavily segregated at the time. The building was mainly full of African American women, including Katherine herself, working on calculations for different NASA projects, nicknamed the computers. However, not long after Katherine started working at NASA, her talents were noticed by many engineers and co-workers. She was eventually moved to the main engineering floor of NASA and promoted to an aerospace technologist in the spacecraft controls branch. However, this achievement did not come without its challenges. Johnson's work in a field that was heavily dominated by white men forced her to work twice as hard to get a space on that NASA floor, often having to advocate for herself to even be invited to meetings. When she realized her male co-workers were having debrief meetings without any of the women, she questioned their reasoning in denying her attendance. "Is there a law?" she said. When they told her there was not, she was allowed to go to all debriefing meetings from then on.
She was later called up to check calculations and assist on Mercury Atlas 6 mission aboard Friendship 7, sending the first man to orbit the Earth, John Glenn. Glenn, wanting to ensure his trip was safe, called for Johnson to check his flight trajectories and landing position. It was vital for NASA to have a successful mission for the millions of Americans watching from home and counting on their country. John Glenn famously quoted, If Johnson says they're good, then I'm ready to go. Individuals were aware of her talent and ability to work on problems and trusted her the most to do so. Not only was she a vital part of sending the first American into orbit, but she was also a part of Apollo 11, the famous mission to send astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Aldrinto to the moon. For this mission, she verified calculations made by electronic computers. This was an extremely hard mission for NASA to accomplish, as no one had ever gone this far in space before. Because of this, calculating every minute detail for the landing and orbit of the spacecraft was all the more important. As the pressure of America rode on the back of the mission, Katherine Johnson rose to the occasion. After success of Apollo 11, she also worked on the Space Shuttle program and Earth Resources satellite, encouraging young students to pursue a career in science and technology. Johnson made huge contributions towards her country through her work with NASA, working tirelessly and concurrently disbanding the societal norms brought upon by segregation. Katherine Johnson's achievements and determination while working at NASA led an example on the frontier of science for younger generations of women to follow.
After her many astounding accomplishments within NASA came many awards and recognition for Katherine Johnson. However, her biggest wish was not to be thanked by fans, but to inspire the next generation to continue her legacy and to follow the frontier she blazed. In 1960, Johnson co-authored a report titled Determination of Azimuth Angle at a Burnout for placing a satellite over a selected Earth position, with engineer Ted Skopinski, becoming the first woman in a flight research division to be credited on a research report. Although Johnson was often shunned from rooms of important discussion on the pretense that she was not valuable or knowledgeable enough to be included, she continued to learn, questioning why things were the way they were. Her hard work prevailed when Ted Skopinski's name appeared next to hers on the cover of their report. The moment proved to women that they have a voice and the ability to do anything that men can do. She also proved to the men around her that women can be intelligent and capable, and that their skewed perceptions of her based on racism and sexism were harmful and unprofessional. In a 1962 edition of the Pittsburgh Courier, Johnson is credited for her work, a rare occurrence for women of color in the media. The front page of the paper quotes, "Her name, in case you haven't already guessed it, is Katherine Johnson, mother, wife, career woman." This excerpt of a popular newspaper at the time, the Pittsburgh Courier, talks about Johnson in a humanizing way, contrasting the way black women were treated during this time period. She influenced many people around her with her poise and intelligence, making them realize the vitality black women have to society.
After retiring from her 33-year career with NASA in 1986 and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2015 for her work at NASA. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to an American citizen who has made incredible contributions toward the security of the United States, world peace, cultural, or any other significant matter to consider worthy enough. Katherine Johnson received this medal from President Obama in 2015 for her contributions to NASA and to science during a critical time in our country's history. In an interview, Johnson encourages her younger audience by promising that, quote, girls are capable of doing everything men are capable of doing. Johnson speaks directly to women and assures them that despite what they are told, their opinions and contributions matter and are worthy enough to be heard. Despite her many challenges at NASA and backlash from people uncomfortable with her presence, she pushed through the hate and pioneered a significant path in science to inspire the next generation of scientists. Currently, 13% of NASA's employees are black and 33.4% are women. However, Johnson continues to inspire young scientists as well, even after her death in 2020. A young girl named Leah writes to Johnson, "I want to start off this letter by saying how inspired I am by you. Growing up as a young African-American girl in America, I've greatly looked up to you. You were brave. In fact, you were the change you wanted to see. You changed the world." Johnson not only influenced people during her time at NASA, denouncing racism and sexism with her hard work, but inspired the youth to follow in her footsteps and blaze their own trail. Johnson's impact not only affected the people around her at NASA and those with their eyes on NASA during the crucial time in U.S. history, continuously today as she encourages many children to follow their dreams, not the stereotypes put in place for them. Katherine Johnson shattered barriers of segregation and prejudice in the United States and pioneered a frontier of acceptance for black female voices in the fields of science and technology, changing the perspectives of those around her and inspiring many more.
Margot Shetterly later wrote Hidden Figures, a book written about the impact of Katherine Johnson and the computer's vitality to the NASA program and to the empowerment of black Americans. Shetterly emphasizes that each of us should be allowed to rise as far as our talent and hard work can take us. Although Katherine Johnson died in February 2020, her legacy lives on in NASA. As of 2016, a portion of the Langley Research Center in Virginia, where she began her career, was named the Katherine G. Johnson Computational Research Facility. She became one of the only 4 people who have had one of the hundreds of buildings at the Langley Research Center named after them. Later in 2018, a statue was built in her honor outside of West Virginia State University, the school she attended back in 1939.
Johnson's legacy lives through the hundreds of young people she inspired and those who have grown to follow her path on the frontier of science. Katherine Johnson destroyed the walls of segregation in the United States, simultaneously creating a space of acceptance in the scientific field for Black women, because of which many women of color flourish today.